The billionaire had paid for a four-person specialty crew, but when his refrigerator became trapped 4 floors below the penthouse, the only mover willing to finish the job was the woman everyone had been told to ignore. Maya Bennett arrived at Grant Holloway's newly renovated building at 7:15 that morning, wearing steel-toed boots, work gloves, and the navy uniform of Metropolitan Premier Moving. At 36, she had learned to study a job site before touching the first box. She checked doorway widths, floor protection, elevator limits, turning angles, and emergency exits while the rest of the crew unloaded designer furniture from 2 trucks parked along the curb. The building had been constructed in the 1920s and recently converted into luxury residences, with Grant's 2-level penthouse occupying the top floors. Glass, marble, and restored brass filled the lobby, but behind the polished surfaces, the service routes remained narrow and unforgiving. Victor Kane, the crew's supervisor, barely looked at Maya's inspection sheet. He assigned her lamps, framed artwork, and small boxes while 3 male movers handled the larger pieces. "Let the heavy crew deal with the real equipment," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya did not argue. She secured the artwork properly, corrected a loose strap on a marble table, and quietly prevented one mover from forcing an oversized cabinet through a doorway at the wrong angle. Grant noticed. The billionaire software founder had expected the moving company to operate without his involvement, but repeated delays kept him near the service entrance, watching contractors move through the building he had spent 2 years restoring. He saw Maya measure before lifting, protect corners before turning, and speak to the building staff with more care than Victor did. Shortly before noon, the crew rolled Grant's new commercial-style refrigerator into the service elevator. The appliance weighed nearly 400 pounds and stood more than 7 feet tall inside, its protective wrapping. Victor pressed the penthouse access button, but the elevator stopped 4 floors below its destination. Dana Brooks, the building's operations manager, hurried over and explained that the service elevator's upper floor access had been taken out of service after a door control fault was discovered that morning. The passenger elevators were too small, and the refrigerator could not remain in the hallway overnight because it blocked part of the emergency route. Victor immediately announced that the job would have to be rescheduled. He said the company would return with another crew after the elevator was cleared, even though no one could say when that would happen. Grant looked at the refrigerator, then at the 4 flights of concrete stairs leading upward. "Your proposal included stair access if the elevator was unavailable," he said. Victor replied that the clause applied only when a specialty stair team and powered equipment had been dispatched. Maya glanced toward the truck. She had already seen the powered stair-climbing dolly secured inside, along with load-rated straps and protective runners. The equipment was present. The specialty crew was not. "It can be moved safely," she said. Victor turned toward her as though she had interrupted a private conversation. Maya explained that the landings were wide enough, the turns could be managed, and the refrigerator's weight remained within the dolly's rated capacity. The work would require careful rigging, controlled movement, and protection at every stair edge, but it did not require waiting another week. Victor laughed. "You think you can move that up 4 flights?" Maya looked at the staircase again before answering. "I know how to move it without damaging the appliance or the building." Grant watched Victor's expression harden. Instead of assigning the available crew to assist her, Victor stepped aside and spoke loudly enough for every worker in the hallway to hear. "Fine, if you are so certain you know, better than the rest of us, you can take responsibility for it yourself." Maya Bennett could survive being underestimated, but she could not afford another week of reduced hours. Long before Victor Kane challenged her in the penthouse stairwell, Maya had learned how quickly one supervisor's opinion could follow a worker home. She lived with her 10-year-old daughter, Sophie, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, where the kitchen table served as a homework desk, household office, and planning station for every dollar they spent. Each Sunday night, Maya arranged her work schedule beside Sophie's school calendar and calculated whether the available shifts would cover rent, groceries, utilities, transportation, and a health plan she could only qualify for after securing permanent employment. Metropolitan Premier Moving hired her as an on-call worker 8 months earlier, promising that reliable employees would be considered for full-time positions. Maya had accepted because she needed immediate income, but moving furniture had never been the limit of her experience. Before a warehouse consolidation eliminated her former position, she had spent nearly 9 years in distribution operations, eventually becoming a shift supervisor responsible for loading plans, equipment inspections, employee training, and workplace safety. She knew how to calculate weight distribution, choose load-rated straps, inspect dollies, protect fragile surfaces, and stop a job when conditions became unsafe. She had completed employer-sponsored training in material handling, rigging fundamentals, and powered equipment operation, but she did not have a college degree. Automated hiring systems reduced years of practical leadership to a missing educational requirement, while employers repeatedly offered her entry-level work and promised to reconsider later. Victor recognized her experience during her first week at the moving company. He also recognized that she noticed shortcuts. When a damaged strap remained in service, Maya tagged it for removal. When a crew exceeded an elevator's posted capacity, she insisted they split the load. When Victor tried to send 2 workers to move a piece that required 4 under company procedure, she documented the assignment rather than pretending it was safe. After each objection, her schedule became lighter. A 5-day week became 4. 4 became 3. Victor always blamed changing customer demand, but workers who stayed silent continued receiving full shifts. Maya understood the message. She also understood what silence could cost if someone was injured or a customer's property was damaged. The Penthouse assignment mattered because it was one of the company's highest-paying jobs of the month, and Maya had been told that strong performance could place her on the permanent hire list. Her lease was due for renewal soon, and the higher monthly rent would be difficult to manage without steadier income. Maya had not explained every detail to Sophie, but her daughter knew enough to notice when grocery choices became smaller and when Maya studied the same budget long after midnight. The night before the move, Sophie had watched her clean her work boots and check the certification cards in her wallet. "Will this job help you get the regular schedule?" she asked. Maya had answered carefully. "It might, if they let my work speak for itself." Now, for floors below Grant Holloway's penthouse, Victor had turned that hope into a public challenge. Maya looked at the refrigerator, the powered stair-climbing dolly, and the crew members waiting to see whether she would back down. She knew refusing could give Victor another reason to cut her hours. Accepting without proper support could let him blame her for anything that went wrong. Then she noticed the service elevator camera above the hallway and Dana Brooks holding the building's delivery checklist. For once, Victor would not be the only person controlling the record of what happened next. Maya Bennett's greatest advantage was not strength. It was knowing exactly how much force she did not need to use. Before touching the refrigerator, she asked Dana Brooks to note the appliance's condition and the equipment available at the scene. Victor Kane rolled his eyes, but Maya ignored him. She removed the powered stair-climbing dolly from the truck, checked its load rating, battery level, braking system, wheel locks, and straps, then inspected all 4 flights of concrete stairs. Each landing was wide enough for the refrigerator to turn, but the clearance near the 3rd-floor railing was less than 2 inches. Maya measured it twice. She laid protective runners over the stairs, patted the corners, and marked where the dolly would need to pivot. Grant Holloway watched from the hallway as she transformed what had looked like an impossible obstacle into a sequence of controlled decisions. Maya then removed part of the refrigerator's protective wrapping so she could inspect the surface before moving it. On the lower rear panel, she found a long, shallow scratch beneath a strip of torn plastic. Victor immediately told her it was only packaging damage and ordered her to cover it again. Maya photographed the scratch with the time and location recorded on her phone, then asked Dana to include it on the delivery checklist. "We do not move high-value equipment without documenting its condition first," Maya said. Victor's jaw tightened, but Grant nodded in approval. Maya centered the refrigerator on the dolly, secured the upper and lower load-rated straps, tested the balance, and adjusted the tilt until the appliance's center of gravity rested over the machine's support frame. Marcus Reed, one of the younger movers, stepped forward to act as a spotter. He had worked with Maya enough to know that she never confused speed with skill. Victor told the rest of the crew to continue unloading downstairs, leaving Maya, Marcus, Grant, and Dana near the stairwell. Maya activated the powered tracks and allowed the dolly to climb the first step slowly. The machine lifted and stabilized the refrigerator while she controlled its angle and direction from below. Marcus remained one landing above, watching the clearance and signaling whenever the appliance approached the wall. Maya stopped after 3 steps to recheck the straps. Victor laughed from the hallway. "At that pace, we will be here all night." Maya did not answer. She resumed only after confirming that nothing had shifted. Step by step, the refrigerator rose toward the first landing without scraping the wall or striking the railing. At the turn, Maya locked the brake, adjusted the dolly's position by inches, and rotated the load through the narrowest point. Grant saw that she was not overpowering the refrigerator. The machine carried the weight while Maya managed balance, friction, and timing. When the refrigerator reached the first landing, Marcus smiled. 3 more flights, he said. Maya checked the straps again and looked upward. The next flight was steeper, but the path remained within the equipment's safe operating limits. Before she could begin, Victor called Marcus back into the hallway. "The crew needs you downstairs," he said. Marcus hesitated and looked at Maya. "She needs a spotter." Victor folded his arms. "She said she could handle it." Dana reminded him that the original service agreement included a specialty stair team, but Victor replied that Maya had chosen to take responsibility for the move. Marcus started to protest, then stopped when Victor warned him not to abandon his assigned duties. Maya stood on the landing beside the secured refrigerator, one hand resting on the dolly's control bar. Grant watched Marcus reluctantly walk away while Victor remained near the stairwell door. The refrigerator had climbed 1 flight without a mark, but Victor had just removed the only worker helping Maya see what waited above. Victor Kane expected Maya Bennett to choose between humiliation and danger, but she refused to give him either. Standing beside the secured refrigerator on the first landing, Maya kept one hand on the power dolly's brake and told everyone she would not move another inch without clear visibility above the load. Victor smirked, as though her caution proved she had exaggerated her ability. "Then the job is finished," he said. Dana bruks disagreed. As the building's operations manager, she could remain outside the appliance's path and serve as a clearance observer from a protected position without touching the refrigerator or operating the equipment. Maya confirmed that Dana understood the hand signals and emergency stop command, then documented the change on the delivery checklist. Grant Holloway watched Victor's expression tighten. Maya had not accepted an unsafe challenge. She had rebuilt the conditions until the move could continue safely. Dana climbed to the next landing and stood behind the railing, well beyond a refrigerator's travel path. Maya checked the upper and lower straps again, tested the brake, and restarted the power tracks. The second flight was steeper than the first. The machine carried the weight, but Maya controlled every adjustment, allowing the refrigerator to rise 1 step at a time. Dana warned her when the top corner came within 3 inches of the wall. Maya stopped, lowered the tilt slightly, and shifted the dolly less than an inch before continuing. At the landing, she locked the brake and waited until the equipment was completely stable. Sweat had formed along her hairline, but her breathing remained measured. Victor stood below with his arms folded, offering no help. Grant remained near the stairwell door, watching Maya solve each problem Victor had expected her to fail. The third flight contained the narrow turn Maya had measured earlier. She positioned protective padding along the railing, raised the refrigerator just enough to clear the first edge, and rotated the dolly in a series of small, controlled movements. For several seconds, less than 2 inches separated the appliance from the metal rail. Dana called the clearance while Maya adjusted the angle by fractions. The refrigerator passed through without touching either side. By the fourth flight, the crew members downstairs had begun gathering near the lower doorway to watch. Maya did not rush for them. She paused to check the battery level, inspected the straps for movement, and continued at the same deliberate pace she had used from the beginning. When the power dolly finally reached the penthouse level, Maya locked the brake and waited for Marcus to return before transferring the appliance onto a flat furniture dolly for the final movement across the protected floor. The refrigerator entered Grant's kitchen without a new scratch, dent, or mark on the walls. Dana inspected the stairwell and found no damage. Grant looked at the appliance, then at Maya, whose gloves were dusty but whose movements remained calm and professional. "You did what the company said required 4 specialists," he said. Maya shook her head. "The equipment carried the weight. I knew how to use it." Victor began explaining that experienced crews often adapted when staffing changed, but Grant had already opened the moving estimate on his phone. The document listed a 4-person stair team, powered climbing equipment, protective materials, and a specialty handling charge. Grant compared the estimate with the 3 movers who had remained downstairs and the woman who had operated the equipment herself. Then he reached the final line, an additional $2,800 for labor and services that had never arrived. The $2,800 charge did more than embarrass Victor Kane. It turned the refrigerator into evidence. Grant Holloway enlarged the estimate on his phone while Dana Brooks compared it with the building's delivery checklist. The estimate listed a 4-person stair team, powered climbing equipment, floor runners, corner guards, and specialty handling supervision. The power dolly had arrived, but Maya Bennett had operated it with Dana, serving only as a clearance observer. No specialty crew had entered the building, and most of the protective materials had come from the building's own maintenance supply after Victor claimed the truck was missing them. Grant looked at Victor. "What exactly did I pay $2,800 for?" Victor answered without hesitation. He said the charge covered availability, scheduling, risk management, and equipment preparation, even if staffing changed at the last minute. Maya knew enough about moving estimates to recognize the explanation as incomplete, but she did not interrupt. She photographed the equipment before returning it to the truck, noting the damaged lower strap Victor had tried to leave in service and the limited quantity of protective runners actually provided. Dana asked the front desk to preserve the loading dock records, elevator logs, and security footage until the billing dispute was resolved. Victor's confidence began to slip. He insisted that the move had been completed successfully and that debating internal staffing would only delay the remaining work. Grant did not move. "You bill me for people who were never here," he said. "That is not an internal staffing issue." Maya glanced toward Marcus and the other movers gathering near the kitchen entrance. None of them spoke, but their expressions suggested the missing crew was not unusual. Dana reviewed the delivery manifest and found more discrepancies. The estimate included reusable floor panels for the penthouse hallway, but the crew had used the building's temporary runners. It listed a hydraulic lifting table that had never been unloaded. It also included 2 hours of specialty setup time before the truck's recorded arrival. Victor claimed the paperwork had been generated from a standard premium package and would be corrected later. Grant asked why he had been asked to approve the full estimate before the move began. Victor changed the subject. He walked behind the refrigerator, pulled back the remaining protective wrap, and pointed to the long scratch across the lower rear panel. "There's the real problem," he said. "She damaged a high-end appliance by moving it without the assigned team." The accusation changed the room instantly. Marcus looked toward Maya, and Dana lowered the checklist in disbelief. Victor stated that Maya had ignored his instruction to reschedule, assumed responsibility for the move, and created damage that could cost thousands of dollars to repair. He said company procedure required an incident report and immediate suspension whenever an employee damaged high-value property. Grant examined the scratch, but could not tell when it had occurred. Maya felt the pressure Victor had been building since the stairwell settled directly onto her shoulders. If he controlled the report, the missing labor charge could become a minor billing adjustment while she became the worker who had damaged a billionaire's refrigerator. Victor held out his hand. "Give me your employee badge. You are done for today." Maya did not reach for it. Instead, she opened her phone and found the photograph she had taken before the refrigerator moved. The torn protective plastic, the timestamp from the loading floor, and the exact same scratch were all visible. She turned the screen toward Grant and Dana. "That damage was already there," she said. Victor stared at the image, But Maya had preserved more than a photograph. She had preserved the moment before he could rewrite what happened. The photograph cleared Maya Bennett of damaging the refrigerator, but also gave the other movers the courage to reveal how many times Victor Kane had blamed them for damage they did not cause. Dana Brooks enlarged Maya's image on her tablet and compared the torn plastic, the location of the scratch, and the recorded time with the loading dock log. The photograph had been taken before the refrigerator entered the service elevator. Grant Holloway asked security to review the loading area footage while the remaining move was paused. Within 20 minutes, the video showed the appliance arriving with the damaged rear panel already turned toward the truck wall. It also showed Victor directing 2 workers to rotate the refrigerator so the scratch faced away from the building staff before it was unloaded. Victor insisted that he had only been protecting the exposed side during transport, but the explanation no longer controlled the room. Marcus Reed finally stepped forward. He told Grant and Dana that Victor regularly ordered crews to conceal pre-existing damage until after delivery, then pressured temporary workers to sign incident reports accepting responsibility. If they refused, their shifts disappeared. If they signed, the company deducted repair costs from their paychecks, while management conducted reviews that rarely reached a conclusion. Another mover admitted that $75 had been withheld from his wages after a dining table arrived with a chipped corner visible in the warehouse photographs. A third said he had lost $200 over a television damaged before it was loaded onto his truck. Maya listened as the pattern spread beyond one refrigerator and one dishonest invoice. Victor tried to stop the conversation by reminding the workers that customer property disputes were confidential internal matters. Grant answered that nothing about his damaged appliance or inflated bill would remain internal until he understood who had authorized the charges and concealed the damage. Dana received the security footage and saved a copy with the delivery records. The video confirmed Maya had inspected the refrigerator before moving it, documented the scratch, used the power dolly within its rated capacity, and stopped whenever visibility or clearance became uncertain. It showed no reckless movement and no contact between the appliance and the stairwell walls. Even after the evidence cleared her, Maya did not celebrate. She asked Dana to preserve the footage showing Marcus being removed as her spotter and the building's protective materials being taken upstairs because the moving company had not supplied enough of its own. Victor's face hardened. He said Maya was collecting information outside her authority, disrupting the crew, and encouraging employees to challenge their supervisor in front of a client. Grant asked him whether any company rule prohibited workers from documenting existing damage or unsafe conditions. Victor did not answer. Instead, he ended the crew's assignment, ordered everyone back to the trucks, and told Maya she would receive instructions from the corporate office. By the time she reached home that evening, an email was waiting in her inbox. Victor had filed a formal complaint accusing her of operating equipment without an assigned specialty team, ignoring a supervisor's direction to postpone the move, exposing a customer's property to unnecessary risk, and creating a confrontation that prevented the crew from completing its work. He did not mention the missing specialists, the inflated charge, the damaged strap, or the photograph that proved the scratch already existed. The message stated that Maya's future shifts were suspended pending an internal safety review. She read at the kitchen table while Sophie worked quietly across from her. Maya had protected the refrigerator, the building, and every person on the stairs, but Victor had transformed those same decisions into the evidence he planned to use against her. Victor Kane offered Maya Bennett everything she had been fighting for, if she agreed to become the official reason everything had gone wrong. The morning after her shifts were suspended, Maya received a message directing her to a private conference room at Metropolitan Premier Moving's regional office. Victor was already seated when she arrived, with 2 documents arranged neatly on the table. The first was a corrective action statement saying Maya had chosen to move the refrigerator without an assigned specialty crew, accepted sole responsibility for the decision, and created unnecessary risk by refusing to postpone the delivery. It did not accuse her of causing the scratch, because the photograph and security footage had already made that impossible. Instead, it turned her caution, preparation, and successful work into a violation of authority. The second document outlined a conditional offer for a full-time logistics coordinator position. The salary was higher than her temporary earnings, the schedule was predictable, and the benefits would begin after 30 days. Victor said he would restore her canceled shifts immediately, remove the complaint from her personnel file, and recommend final approval for the permanent role if she signed a statement. "You wanted your experience to be recognized," he said. "This is how that happens." Maya read every line carefully. The statement also said that any discrepancy involving Grant Holloway's invoice had resulted from centralized office billing and was unrelated to decisions made at the job site. Victor presented the wording as routine protection for the company, but Maya understood what it would do. It would separate him from a missing stair team, the absent equipment, the damaged strap, and the order that removed Marcus from the landing. It would leave her responsible for the only visible decision the company could criticize. Victor leaned back and told her no one had been injured. The refrigerator had reached the penthouse, and Grant would receive a billing adjustment. He said continuing the dispute would only damage the reputations of everyone involved. Maya thought about the lease renewal notice on her kitchen counter, Sophie's question about a regular schedule, and the health coverage she had been trying to secure for 8 months. The position in front of her could stabilize their lives immediately. For several seconds, she held the pen above the signature line. Then she remembered Marcus explaining how workers lost shifts when they refused to accept blame. She remembered the mover who had lost $75 for a damaged table and the one who had lost $200 for a broken television. If Maya signed, her own problem might disappear, but the system that created it would remain untouched. That evening, she brought copies of the documents home and placed them beside her budget notebook. Sophie saw the employment offer and asked whether Maya had finally received the permanent job. "They offered it," Maya said, "but only if I agree that moving the refrigerator was my decision alone." Sophie was quiet for a moment. Would that mean Mr. Kane did nothing wrong? Maya looked at the statement again. It would not say those exact words, but it would create that exact result. The next morning, Maya returned to the regional office and placed both documents and signed on Victor's desk. She told him she would cooperate with a legitimate safety review, but she would not accept sole responsibility for a job he had understaffed or sign away what the record showed. Victor's expression remained calm as he closed the folder. "Then your suspension stays in effect," he said, "and I will recommend that the company end your assignment permanently." Maya walked out without the job, without her shifts, and without knowing whether the truth would protect her before the next rent payment was due. Victor Kane had built his case around the belief that no one would examine the entire staircase, but every camera angle told the same story. Maya Bennett had done the job safely, and he had tried to make her pay for exposing him. 3 days after Maya refused to sign the corrective action statement, Grant Holloway arrived at Metropolitan Premier Moving's regional office with Dana Brooks and a secured copy of the building's surveillance footage. The company's owner, Richard Coleman, had ordered an independent review after Grant disputed the $2,800 specialty charge and threatened to end all future business with the mover. Maya was asked to attend, but was told only that the investigation had reached a preliminary conclusion. When she entered the conference room, Victor sat at one end of the table beside a regional manager and an attorney. Grant and Dana sat across from him, while Marcus Reed waited near the door with 2 other movers who had agreed to provide statements. Richard began by playing the loading dock footage. It showed the refrigerator arriving with the rear panel already scratched. It showed Victor directing workers to rotate the damaged side away from building staff. The next recording followed Maya from the service elevator to the stairwell. She inspected the equipment, documented the appliance, checked the load rating, protected the stairs, and refused to continue after Marcus was removed until Dana could safely act as a clearance observer. Every pause Victor had described as delay appeared on camera as a safety check. Every decision he called insubordination followed written company procedure. The refrigerator never struck a wall, railing, or stair edge. Dana then presented the building's entry logs. No 4-person specialty team had entered the property. No hydraulic lifting table had been unloaded. Most of the floor protection listed on the estimate had come from the building's maintenance supply. The company's dispatch records created an even larger problem. The same serialized powered stair-climbing dolly assigned to Grant's move had also been recorded as operating at another job 17 miles away during the same hours. The 4 specialty workers listed on Grant's billing records were clocked in at unrelated jobs. Richard asked Victor to explain. Victor claimed clerical errors and said centralized billing had created the duplicate entries. The attorney then placed Maya's unsigned statement on the table. Its wording attempted to remove Victor from all job site decisions while assigning Maya's sole responsibility for the move. Marcus described being ordered away after warning that Maya needed a spotter. The other workers provided payroll records showing deductions for damage documented before their assignments began. Victor's explanation collapsed beneath evidence that did not depend on anyone's memory. Richard announced that Victor was suspended immediately pending a broader audit of customer invoices, payroll deductions, equipment logs, and disciplinary reports. Maya's suspension was lifted, and the complaint against her was removed from her file. Grant would receive a full refund for every service that had not been provided. Maya expected relief, but what she felt first was exhaustion. The truth had protected her, but only because she had photographed the scratch. Dana had preserved the footage, and several frightened workers had finally spoken. Richard closed the investigation folder and looked directly at her. "Your assignment has been restored," he said. "But before you return to the trucks, this company needs to decide whether that is still where your experience belongs." Maya Bennett had carried a refrigerator up 4 flights. But the real victory came when the company finally stopped asking workers to carry the cost of someone else's dishonesty. Richard Coleman did not offer her a promotion inside the conference room. Instead, he placed her warehouse records, safety certifications, performance reviews, and the complete Penthouse incident file before an independent panel from operations, human resources, and workplace safety. Maya was evaluated on the same standards used for every permanent supervisor: equipment knowledge, planning, documentation, judgment, employee training, and response under pressure. Over the next 10 days, the company's audit expanded beyond Grant Holloway's move. Investigators found specialty labor billed on jobs where no specialty crews had been dispatched, equipment recorded at multiple locations during the same hours, and payroll deductions imposed without completed damage reviews. Workers who had been charged for pre-existing damage received reimbursement, and customers were refunded for services that had never been provided. Victor Kane remained suspended while the company referred the financial findings for further review and examined every disciplinary report he had approved. Marcus Reed and the other movers were interviewed without Victor present, and their schedules were restored without retaliation. Grant received a corrected invoice and a written explanation, but he demanded more than a refund. He informed Metropolitan Premier Moving that he would use them again only if future contracts identified the actual crew, assigned equipment, and verified condition of every high-value item before work began. Richard agreed and implemented the requirement across all premium moves. Maya returned to temporary shifts while the panel completed its review. She did not assume that one successful job entitled her to a management position, but for the first time, her experience was being examined instead of dismissed. 2 weeks later, Richard called her back to the regional office. He offered her the position of logistics and safety supervisor, with stable hours, health insurance, and responsibility for reviewing high-risk moves before crews were dispatched. The job also gave her authority to remove damaged equipment from service and stop assignments that did not meet staffing requirements. Maya accepted because the position matched the work she had already spent years learning to do, not because a billionaire had noticed her or because the company felt guilty. That evening, she brought the offer letter home and placed it beside Sophie's school calendar. "Does this mean you have the regular schedule now?" Sophie asked. Maya smiled. "It means we can finally plan more than 1 week at a time." Their lease was renewed, and the new income allowed Maya to stop calculating every grocery item against the possibility of another canceled shift. Several weeks later, she returned to Grant's building to inspect another scheduled high-value delivery. The same refrigerator stood inside the Penthouse kitchen, its original scratch documented and repaired, its delivery record attached to the final service file. Before allowing the new crew to begin unloading, Maya counted the workers, checked the stair equipment, inspected the straps, and confirmed that every item listed on the work order was physically present. Grant watched from the hallway as she compared the record with the equipment. "Still making sure everything matches?" he asked. Maya secured the inspection sheet to her clipboard. That is how people know what they are paying for, and how workers know they will not be blamed for what was never theirs. The refrigerator had once looked like an impossible burden placed on one woman. In the end, it became the proof that she had always known how to move more than weight.